Hello and welcome to Inside the Therapy Room. I'm your host, Sam Sellers. I'm a registered therapist, a wife and fur mama, and I am passionate about breaking down the barriers and stigma attached to therapy. I want to begin by honouring the traditional custodians of the land we live and work on. Today, Matt is on Ngunnawal land and Sam is on Gundungurra land. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions and cultures of our First Nations people. We must always remember that the land below our feet is, was and always will be Aboriginal land. Today we are chatting to Matt Musgraves, who is the founder and principal counsellor at Strong Space Counselling, an online private practice specialising in creating safe spaces for men and fathers to be their full, complex selves. Tune in to hear Matt chat about challenges facing men in therapy, what it's like for men to learn how to access and integrate emotions into their world, and the role Matt plays in modelling vulnerabilities and behaviour to his clients. He also shares a myth that he would love to smash, and this one is a doozy, so make sure you stick around for that. We hope you enjoy joining us inside the therapy room. Welcome, Matt. How you going today?
Really, really good.
Friday afternoon. We're recording this on a Friday afternoon. Do you work weekends?
I do not work weekends and I
Nice.
have Fridays off clients. So I'm
Oh,
coming in
long
fresh.
weekend.
Yep, it's good. It's been a good day.
Nice. I don't see clients on Monday, so I have a long weekend on the
Mm,
opposite side of things. So,
right.
but it is nice. It's nice to settle into the week or settle out of the week.
Out of it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I like to land. I like
Yeah.
to, go from the weekend and dive right on in and see my clients and power through
Yeah.
Monday to Thursday and then come Friday I just go, oh, okay.
Breathe. Yeah.
Breathe.
Yeah. You are the total opposite to me. I like to ease on in.
Yeah, fair
Ease on
enough.
into the week. Ease on in.
Yeah.
So, Matt, you are here to chat to us about working with men, working with fathers, and you work
Yes,
solely online, correct?
I do 100% online.
Amazing. How nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good. I wasn't 100% sure how it was going to be received,
Yeah.
given that I was sort of working in person prior to that, and I've only ever
Yeah.
done in-person work with men before that. So then we transitioned into the second pandemic lockdown here in Canberra,
Mm-hmm.
which was like 18 months or something after the first one. So,
Yes.
we had a solid gap. And then I just moved everything online. Then I came back to face after the lockdown was lifted, and only one out of my 12 or something clients at the time came back to in person. I was doing the rest of them, they continued online or over the
Yeah.
phone. So I just said, why am I paying rent? you know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
um, and just canned the office and have gone fully online, and it's just booming. It's great because I get to work with guys across Australia. So
Yeah.
um, opens up my capacity rather than just seeing Canberra based clients.
Yeah. It creates a space for flexibility as well because
That's right.
you're not stuck in a certain time window or anything like that.
Yeah,
And when we think of Australia, we have multiple different time zones as well, so
exactly.
being able to cater for that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's
uh,
actually really helpful because
yeah.
I've got some like windows during the day which get a little bit harder to fill, I'll say,
Yes.
compared to my afternoons or early
Yeah.
mornings or whatever.
Yeah.
And my Perth clients, they love it because for them
Oh
it's
yeah.
early morning and it's
Absolutely.
the times I can't get filled
Yeah.
from East Coast. So it
It
works really
works.
well for my
Yeah,
calendar to
absolutely.
yeah.
And I find online counseling great. And I think that there is
Yeah.
this sort of stigma attached to it that it is somehow not as effective as in person, but
Yeah.
there is very few things that can't be done in an online counseling session. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
most sort of approaches or methods that most therapists use can be adapted to be done online. So
Absolutely.
it just adds so much flexibility for
Yeah.
people and
Thank you.
safety for them to be able to create, stay at home, stay in their safe space and still be able to
Exactly.
get the therapy and get a therapist that actually suits them as opposed to just the one that's in the same
Exactly.
town.
Right.
You know?
It's really accessible,
Yeah, absolutely.
The feedback that I've got. I mean, we know the research has been really clear, especially
Yeah.
since the lockdowns where everybody moved online for that huge chunk of time. The
Mm,
research has been clear. Yeah, Zoom, online, phone counselling is equally as effective as in-person counselling. It's in just like everything, it's entirely dependent on the client
yeah,
finding the right fit for them and what works for them. So it's
absolutely.
really, really simple. I've got a lot of guys. I've worked with a lot of guys who are like, oh, it's just doesn't feel right. I'm not getting that connection. I'm like, great, awesome. Let's
Yeah,
find you someone local to you,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Let's find someone who's going to be better suited on person. I've had guys go from Zoom over to phone and loved it. I've had guys go from phone over to Zoom and loved it. And once they
Okay.
find the right fit, they just
Yeah.
stick with it, and it's really good. But what I was going to say is, the fact that I'm able to meet with so many different guys from across Australia, and so many of them are like, "Oh, I'm so glad that I can work with you," or "Your style
Yeah.
really suits me," or "Your modality that you're using, it's not anywhere in my town or in my
Yeah.
city, or people are booked out for so far in advance." Whatever. So I go, "Great."
Yeah.
You can be in Adelaide, you can be in Melbourne, you can be in Brisbane, you can be in Sydney, and still work with me,
Yeah.
and it works really, really well, I think.
Absolutely. It's great. I love online counseling.
Yeah, and I suppose the other thing that's coming up for me as well is that a lot of my men, they have a hard time enough with counselling
Yeah.
and with therapy as it is,
Hmm.
right? So for them to be able to take an extra half an hour at lunchtime and just go and
Yep.
sit in their car and do it on the phone, or put the phone on the dashboard and have the Zoom looking at them, or whatever they're doing in the car, on their lunch break, or walking around the lake, or if they are at home, they can go and make themselves a cup of coffee. And if I'm on the phone, I got no idea what they're doing. Right.
Yeah.
So they just get to be really relaxed and calm. They don't have to worry about other people around them, what they're doing. It just looks like they're on a phone call. Right. But if you're being seen going into a therapy office, or if you've got to leave for an extra half an hour,
Yeah.
off work, so you got to drive to the office and get there, then you have to explain that. So I get a lot of feedback from guys that they're hesitant at first because they also think the narrative is in-person therapy is the most effective.
Mm.
And yet eventually, after they either try it or after a little while, the feedback is always the same. I really didn't think it was going to be as good as it was, and it was. So,
Yeah.
I take it.
Absolutely. The ease of it is fantastic. So I think it's great. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Matt, tell me a little bit about what drew you to working specifically with men and fathers. Where does that passion come from?
Oh gosh, how much time do we have? No,
Loaded question.
loaded question. If I'm completely honest, I remember having a conversation with my wife before I started the business early last year. And at that time, I'd already been working for a year in another group practice, a private practice, and I was seeing pretty much anyone. It was a sex therapy practice. So I was seeing
Oh,
women, men, trans
amazing.
individuals. I was working with like poly couples. I was
Yep.
working with sex workers. I was working, you name it. And I was just thrown in the deep end at that point,
Yeah.
right? And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And then so I was like, oh, if I go out on my own, what should what's my niche? What am I really interested in? And
Yeah.
at that point, I'd spent 6 years leading up to that point, exclusively working with men in
Mm.
a completely different sector: case management, probation, parole, criminology, in and out of
Yep.
the criminal justice sector, working facilitating groups for
Yep.
violent men, basically. And
Okay.
so I was like, oh, do I really want to just work with men? Really? Like,
Yeah.
I've been doing that for so long. But then there was just this really strong part of me that's like, look, that's your bread and butter. That's where you feel
Mm.
most confident. You can always expand out later as you go. You can always add to the business as it comes. And now, 18 months later, I just absolutely love working with the guys and the fathers that I've worked with. And I don't
Yeah.
see myself changing because it's so needed, and I just I'm now like starting to train and help and sort of peer supervise a lot of
Mm.
other guys who are just getting into the counseling space and are working with men. So I'm starting to
Yep.
build this little community of counselors and people who really like love working with guys.
Yep.
And I've fallen head over heels in love with it.
Amazing.
And just don't see myself finishing up working
Yeah.
exclusively with guys for a long time, I think.
Yeah. I think when it feels natural and you feel excited about
Yeah.
somebody in that space coming in to your virtual or literal therapy room, I think that's when you know that you've hit your sweet spot, when it doesn't
Yeah.
feel forced and you sort of go, oh gosh, not another one of those, like not another
Yeah.
guy, not another dad, like geez. I think when there is that, yes, there's
Yeah.
still excitement, that's when you know you've hit your stride and you've hit your sweet spot. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Spending 6 years in the criminal justice sector, working right at the pointy end with
Yeah.
some really high risk clients. Let's use
Yep.
a non-derogatory term for that
Yes. Yep.
cohort. But facilitating domestic violence, men's behavior change programs, just like really challenging, really hyper risky stuff where you're constantly thinking about safety
Yep.
and managing risk and those sorts of places. Counseling is kind of like a breath of fresh air. I come into it and I'm just like, oh my God,
Yeah.
they all want to be here.
Yes. Yeah, there's a
And
choice about it all of a
there's a
sudden.
choice.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to work with me and they want to move on, awesome. They can
Yeah.
do that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're not court mandated or anything to be here. So a huge weight off my shoulders where I come in and I get to work with men who really want to be here. And they're my people, right? I've been working with some of the same guys now for 2.5 years, and
Yeah.
that seems wild to me, you know. But it's amazing, and I
Yeah,
really
that
do love
continuity
it.
of care is incredible. And
Yeah.
that sort of psychotherapy model as opposed to just a clinical 6 sessions, get in, get out model just creates such a holding of care and support
Yes.
that I think is unlike anything else. So, what sort of issues are you seeing come up? Are you still sort of working with people who are in the sort of world of domestic violence or things like that you used to be seeing? Are we seeing them in a different capacity?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, when you start when you start the business, you're leveraging all of your old networks and referrals and
Yeah,
people who know you and were waiting for you to open, and and then
yeah,
all of a sudden you get this influx. And being in the criminal justice sector for so long here in Canberra, domestic violence clients galore coming
yeah.
through.
Okay.
At least initially. As time's gone on, it's been about 18 months now since I sort of started taking on clients. I've got a whole spectrum and of issues that I kind of work with.
Yeah.
Specializing and niching down and working with men and
Mm-hmm.
even with fathers comes with like you're not just working with grief and loss. You're
Yeah.
not just working with trauma. You're not just working, just in these like really specific niches. I get that. I run the whole gamut
Yeah.
of clients, which is kind of a nice place to start off in the industry, I think, because I
Yeah.
get that experience across the board. The core issues that I kind of see
Yeah.
every single day, not to get too deep about it, but there's a lot of men who have never experienced emotional, relational safety in their life,
Yeah.
right? Not from their parents, not from their work colleagues, not from their partners, not from their children,
Mm,
right? And whilst a lot of the work I do with those guys is on the ways that they contribute to that in their own lives,
mm.
right? The way that they hold themselves back, the way that they struggle and fear being vulnerable, with those people sharing. What are the things that hold them back? What are they protecting themselves from? There's a very real struggle that a lot of people have knowing how to hold emotional space for men.
Yeah.
Right. So even when guys do build up the courage and the confidence to step out and show their emotions or be vulnerable with their partners or with their kids or with someone close to them, friends, family, a lot of it either gets sort of shut down or invalidated, or that same old narrative of like, well, suck it up, be a man.
Yeah.
What do you want? What do you want me to do about it? I have no idea what to say to you. Let me just try to fix the problem, kind of
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
which I don't think anyone's doing intentionally. I think there's a huge gap in people's awareness of how to hold emotional space for men because men have never given anyone capacity to do that.
Yeah.
That makes it really hard for them to step out of the same comfort zone
Yeah.
that's actually making them really struggle in their relationships
Yeah.
and in their own lives. So that's kind of the number one issue that I work with,
Yeah.
right? Is what are the ways that we're holding, the parts of us are holding us back that are protecting us from that fear very validly, right?
Mm,
And still being able to give ourselves the strength and the courage to be able to meet our own needs or ask to have our needs met,
Yeah.
right? So in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, you know, guys are relearning how to advocate for themselves in their
Yeah.
relationships with their parents and with the people around them in a very compassionate and understanding way, which does not come easily when we've been invalidated or pushed away. So that's the number one thing I'm seeing when I'm working with guys.
Yeah. I would imagine that there would also be a difficulty in the sense that, when we think about guys and emotion or, men crying and things like that, there's almost, this fetish, of
Mm,
particularly heterosexual women going, oh my gosh, I just love when a man cries. It's just like, it's almost like they fetishize that sort of act. And it's like, well, this should be just a part of you, holding a space for somebody else's experience of emotion, human emotion, not just male
right.
emotion,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I really resonate with that. Like
yeah,
I've probably not thought about it in that way, with that language, but it can often feel like that.
yeah.
And as much as like we're not kink shaming, we're not like there's nothing
Oh, of
wrong
course not.
with
Yeah.
parts of us like really
Yeah.
enjoying that and seeing
Of
that and
course.
holding that.
Yeah.
But when that part sort of leads the conversation, it can feel really condescending. It can feel
Yeah.
really invalidating, right?
Absolutely.
And when that happens, totally normal. A lot of men just get that shame reinforced around, well, there is obviously something wrong with me
Yeah.
feeling this way, and you don't know how to handle it. And
Yeah.
though that's not the fault of everyone, one of two things has to happen. Either that person has to be able to hold their own parts back so that they can connect with that man who's being vulnerable and showing emotion in a way that makes them feel really safe,
Yeah.
right? And that takes a lot of work on the part of a partner. And especially, we know for women, that work can be really hard to do because they're already holding so much of
Yeah.
men's emotions,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
So it feels like an extra thing that their
Yeah.
partners have to kind of do and manage in order to create safety. So I
Hmm.
totally get that. That's one of the big struggles. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, the thing that I work with is like, how do men who are showing vulnerability, who
Mm.
receive that message from that person relationally, acknowledge, hold respect for, understand that they are going to potentially feel
Yeah.
that way or
Yeah.
respond in a way that's not what you like or what you need, and work with the parts of you that feel
Yeah.
defensive or aggressive or are receiving that message that we can't be emotional, because that's one of the biggest things that the guys struggle with is like, see,
Yeah.
you're not meeting me with where,
Yeah.
look, I'm doing my work and you're just coming at it from a condescending place. That's
Yeah.
not what's really happening, right?
Mm.
What we can do is we can say, yeah, this is not how I wanted you to receive this, and I totally get why you are,
Yeah. Yep.
because this is mine
Absolutely.
and I can hold my own stuff.
Mm.
And I can say, hey, when you do that, I feel
Yeah.
really condescending. I feel really small and really little. And I know that's not what you wanted.
Yeah.
I know that's not your intention.
Yeah. Being
Right.
able to communicate your need in that moment whilst acknowledging the other
Exactly.
person's perspective is
Exactly.
so powerful in making that not turn into a conflict or a, tit for
Right.
tat situation. Absolutely.
Right.
I
And
would I would think that there is a part of your therapy where there would almost be a modeling role for you as to sort of be able
absolutely.
for men to be able to see another man be comfortable with emotion, be comfortable setting boundaries, communicating needs, all of those things that they want to learn. There's sort of that
Mm,
mirroring modeling sort of thing happening.
definitely. So
Yeah.
definitely, it's one of the things I probably wasn't ready,
Mm.
or wasn't, it's not that I wasn't ready, it's just that I wasn't aware of the extent to which that was going to help my clients.
Yeah.
So when I was in the domestic violence space and I was working facilitating men's behavior change groups, I it was my role as the only male facilitator with
Yeah.
all other women with men who essentially hated women, right?
Yep.
Had to be that model, right?
Mm.
I had to show the respect, and which I would do anyway, right? But at the
Yep.
same time, there was an extra added layer of importance that was put into that space,
Mm.
right? And so I took that really, really seriously, and I spent years and years and years honing that skill of being okay playing second fiddle and not taking up too much space, always offering the female facilitator to step in and share, right, and giving them space to decide whether or not they felt comfortable and safe in particular areas, and just model that, right, for the guys. I wasn't expecting so much to have to do that in my own counseling
Yeah.
practice as
Yeah.
I probably do. So
Yeah.
when you train as a counselor, you probably remember, Sam, and even as you talk with other counsellors in networking and all those sorts of things, there's a real taboo around self-disclosure.
Oh, yes.
Whoa.
I had a chat with another therapist about, bringing lived experience into the
Yep,
room. It is a very hot contentious topic among
it is.
therapists. Yeah.
It is. And I love it. I love the
Same.
topic.
Yeah.
Because for me, as a man who is doing a lot of his own work and
Yeah.
have spent a long time kind of coming back to myself and training in this and wanting to be the best facilitator I can be,
Yeah.
I've come to realize that my male clients, my men, they really love when I share my stories about the
Yeah.
things that I do and how I approach challenging situations and what I say to myself and how I think about it and how I do my parts work and my own healing and unburdening and how and it can get really, really you're walking a very fine line into
Yeah.
just making the session about me.
Yeah.
And this is how I would do it. And this is
Yeah.
my language. So a lot of my own professional development and a lot of my own supervision is very much around how much of myself I bring into the space.
Yeah.
Right. And yet at the same time, knowing that that's an incredibly effective way to get other men to start thinking about things differently, that there
Yeah.
is a different way to think about this situation. I was working with one particular client recently who was really struggling to not be making connections
Mm-hmm.
from his ex-partner's behavior. All
Right.
right.
Yeah.
And coming up with some pretty, let's say, wild assumptions.
Mm.
Okay. Around what that meant and what they were trying to do and those sorts of things. And I sort of said, yeah, I really get it. I really
Yeah.
understand. I can see how that part sees this behavior and this behavior and this behavior as equaling this really terrible, problematic thing over here. Totally get that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to offer to you, like, I've got a different perspective. I've taken those same behaviors, and this is the story I've told myself,
Yeah.
right? Around that this is actually what's happened, and this has been the natural consequence of that, and then that's been brought to your behavior, and that's actually that's a huge opportunity for you to step into this other space of. And so what would the difference be for you if you were
Yeah.
to think this way versus this way?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think the impact of that's going to be on you and your system? And he's like, I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, of course you
Exactly.
haven't. Why would you have? No one's
Yeah.
offered that to you, right?
Absolutely.
You can see how when you get fixated on this presumption and assumption
Mm.
over here, that's actually really disconnecting you from the potential
Yeah.
of, the safe relationship that you want to build,
Yeah.
right? Because it's protecting you from whatever that means. And over
Mm-hmm.
here, if it's just a natural consequence and it's a totally normal and appropriate reaction, and it's an opportunity for you to really hear and see and connect with, your ex-partner,
Yeah.
right, around this co-parenting issue, then you can see how that might shape and change what the outcome of what actually happens. Not needing to defend yourself, not needing to feel like you're proving yourself or like they're going against you in some way. It's like, oh, how do I? And that's when we started grabbing. What is it going on for him that's holding him back and keeping him focused over here? That's not going to change overnight,
Yeah.
and he knows
No.
that, and we're
Yeah.
working on that together, and
Yeah.
we catch up every week, and that's okay,
Yeah.
right? But if he doesn't have someone there like me to challenge, to give alternate options, to interpret things in different kind of ways based on
Yeah.
my experience in a really positive, supporting, safety making kind of way, a lot of people, and I think a lot of counselors would work with a guy like that and just be like, this guy is paranoid.
Yeah.
He is like, it's super intense. Like, this is really
Yeah.
scary and problematic, which it might be, in some cases. I'm lucky enough to have been working with him. I know it's not,
Yeah.
and I know what that's kind of like, and I know there's a lot of support for that family, which is backing them both up. So I can go into that conversation not worrying too much about the safety of it,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
But ultimately, I still want to be there for him as my client. That's why it's really important for me to say, I get why your part sees these things and equals that.
Yeah,
That makes complete sense.
absolutely.
And maybe it's not the whole story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe there's more to it. And what does that do for you? And so, yeah, that's one of the things that I work really hard to do in my own practice is be the support for the man, even when I'm challenging or giving an alternative perspective or sort of and putting my own stuff into the space. It's always relevant about what would this small story mean for you now that you've heard me and how I think
Yeah.
about this particular thing. What does it bring up in you, and really reverse it back to them? And it's a very difficult skill and a very fine line,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I think, self-disclosure has always been, for as long as I can remember, a really, contentious issue. But
Yeah,
I think for those who sort of, I think if you're sitting at either end of the spectrum, it's dangerous. I think it is
yeah,
just as dangerous to, make so much of the session about you,
hmm,
just as much as it is to never say anything about you, because
yeah,
you want your clients to see you as human. Like even just something
yeah,
as simple as, mentioning, this is what I've done with my therapist or whatever. And they go, oh,
yeah,
so like you have therapy. Yeah, of course.
yeah,
Of course we have therapy. Gosh, are you kidding? So I think even just like little things like that can just go, oh,
yeah,
there's an ease that it gives the clients, to not only be able to see new alternatives, new thoughts, but to know that we're all in the same boat. Like
yeah,
we're all just figuring life out together, and
yeah,
it's that commonality of human experience, I think,
hmm,
that really resonates in the room,
yeah,
to just normalize what we're doing. Oh, okay,
yeah,
I can just relax about this.
yeah,
So I love self disclosure and working from a lived experience part of you.
mm,
And yeah, I think it's a real missed opportunity for those who sort of tread the line of never using it at all. And
right,
I shared a meme on my Instagram story today about, sort of therapists not having a blank slate, and it's all of these images of different
yeah,
facial expressions, and no client of mine ever gets a blank slate here. If you're
no,
outraged, I'm outraged, and I'm gonna show you that I'm outraged, not just say that. We want to sort
mm.
of have that commonality
Yeah,
there.
ask myself, is that what benefit is it for the client
Yeah,
for
what
holding
purpose is
holding
it?
myself back? Therapy works, counseling works because of the relationship. We know
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
right? It doesn't matter the training, it doesn't matter the
Yep.
background, it doesn't matter the modality, it doesn't matter the mode of delivery.
Yeah.
It's about the relationship. It's about the client
Hmm.
liking and trusting us with their story to process and work through their stuff.
Yeah.
My clients like me better
Yeah.
when I'm a real human with my own struggles
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
I own my stuff. If I'm running late to a session because, my kid's at home sick or something, like,
Yeah.
they want to, like, they're not gonna,
It normalizes it.
it normalizes it
Yeah.
totally. And so
Absolutely.
they can feel safe in their own experience as well, even if it's
Yeah.
not the same as ours. So back to that modeling, right? Like I believe in the power of the relationship and not in the power of and not I don't put so much stock in the power of like my intellect or
Yeah.
whether or not I'm doing it right or whether or not I've read enough books,
Yeah.
right?
And I
I
think
still
that
want to
keeps
do
you as
that.
a therapist. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that keeps you as a therapist in the position of human who
Yeah,
is helping and supporting and guiding, and not in the position of expert. And that is not a
exactly.
position I like to sit in. I
Yeah.
like to sit in the space of I'm a human with lived experiences in these areas, which is why I like to work with clients who present in these areas. You
Yeah,
are a man, you are a dad. That is why you get to, share that human experience in the room.
exactly.
So I think, yeah, it takes you out of the space of, I don't want to be seen as an expert. I don't want to be seen as someone who knows it all and has it all together, because by geez, I do not. So
Yeah. I think the client likes to to put us in that
I
box.
know.
I get that all. You're the expert, Matt. You tell me what to do. And I go,
Oh, yeah,
oh,
yeah. I
eh,
had one client go, "What do you think this is? Your job or something?" And I was like, "Well, a little bit, just a little
no,
bit."
I
But
always say to them, it's like, if I tell you what to do and it doesn't work, what's that going to do for us?
yeah,
How are you going to come back the next time? Because I can tell you what's coming up for me. And if
yeah,
that's what your system needs, I will, we can talk about that and we
yeah,
can, hash that out.
absolutely.
But I'm more curious about what impact that's going to go away and have if I get
Yeah,
really directive, if I, because so many of the men that I work with, they've never had counseling before. They've
yeah,
never had this kind of support. They've never, they don't have any skill development in, relation. They're looking for tools. They're looking for answers. They're looking for
yeah,
intellectual, rational problem solving skills.
yeah,
And we know that that's just not effective when it comes to emotional, relational
yeah,
problems
absolutely. Or trauma.
or trauma, right?
Yeah,
Like sometimes
absolutely.
we can't logic our way out of it. We
Yeah.
can't analyze our way. We can't overthink our way out of a
And sometimes
bodily somatic
reasoning your
response.
way out of it actually is really invalidating. It's
It's
an awful experience to try
I
and reason. That's just bypassing human
right,
emotion.
right.
So
And as men, that's what we've been taught to do:
yeah,
bypass human
exactly.
emotion.
Yeah,
So most of the men that I work with, they've never fully experienced their own emotional capacity. One
yeah.
of my favorite questions that I ask almost all of my guys early on is when was the last time you really remember feeling something strongly?
Mm, great
Do you
question.
know the amount of times I have stumped men
Yeah.
into not responding? They can't think of it.
I
It
tell you
just
what, I think that would stump most people. I think that's a
it would.
question that would
It
stump a lot of
absolutely would.
people. Yeah, because it really means that you have to self-reflect and have enough self-awareness to even be able to regulate and notice when those
Yeah.
emotions are happening.
Yeah.
I
One
think
of
that
my
would stump stacks of people.
one of my favorite answers from the guys I work with. Oh yeah, on Friday. Yep, on Friday. It's like, what did you feel on Friday? Oh yeah, my sister got engaged and I was real happy for her. I was like, great, that's
Yeah.
amazing. What did that feel like? What do you
Yeah.
mean? What did it
I
feel
felt
like?
happy about
I felt
it.
happy. And I'm like, yeah, no, I
Yeah.
say, I believe you. I believe it. You
Mm-hmm.
were genuinely happy in that moment. Totally
Yeah.
get it. What did it feel like? What does
Yeah.
happy feel like to you?
Yeah.
He's like, I just think that I'm happy. I'm like, right. So you didn't feel happy.
You
You
thought about
thought
it.
happy.
Yeah.
You thought that you were really happy,
Yeah.
right? And he's like,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's a really good point. I'm like, great, wonderful.
Mm.
When was the last time you remember feeling
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
right? And so many guys go, it hasn't been since I was a kid, or
Yeah.
it might be that angry outburst that they had no control over, or something, right? And then we go, right, what was that like for you? What did
Mm-hmm.
it take for you to get from this point to this last feeling that you had, this last outburst?
Yeah.
And they can name 8, 10, 15 transgressions before their body will actually allow them to explode, because they're so emotionally dissociated,
Yeah.
right, from their bodies, and so tight and so tense and so logical that they cannot get to a place where they allow themselves to
Mm-hmm.
feel their own emotions,
Yeah.
right? And so I think a lot of the work that I do is silently and slowly, very gently, um, caressing them into a
Yeah.
place where they're just like, oh, if I hear it in their voice, I go, oh, what was that?
Mm-hmm.
Because that was, I bet you there's something in that,
Yeah.
right? And they'll be like, oh yeah, no, don't know. I'm like, what is that? Confused? Are you confused? Like, are you a little bit uncertain? Yeah. Where do you feel uncertain?
Yeah.
Where do you feel confused? Oh, I feel it's like the stomach's dropped. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
perfect. There you go. You've done it. You've
Yeah.
done it. You're successful. Now you've felt a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And they're
Yeah.
like, what? I'm like, that's it. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You just
Being
noticed
able
it
to
and you felt
connect
it and
that
described it.
body sensation, that physical
Yeah.
sensation with a human emotion is one
Yeah.
of the most difficult things for
It
a lot of
is.
people to do. And I
Yeah.
think, if there's people out there listening going, well, why does it have to be slow? Why does it have to be caressed out of people? Well, because we don't want to overwhelm anybody.
Yeah.
If we were to do that really quickly and a really fast process, that's like that's going to be so overwhelming that people will just check right on out. I'm checking
That's
out of
right.
this hotel, like as
Exactly. If
quick as
you're
possible.
if you're already dissociating, if you're
Yeah.
already struggling for potentially decades of your
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
and you've never felt or you've really struggled to connect to your feelings somatically and in your body,
Yeah.
what's going to happen when we open those floodgates?
Mm.
In my language, what are the protective parts doing?
Yeah.
And how are they going to feel about it if we bypass that protection?
Yeah.
Right? Because they're doing it for a reason. The dissociation is happening for a very good reason.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So if we go too fast, right? If we step into that, and I've done this twice now recently, like this year, I'd say, where clients have come back to me either actually in the session after I get them into their body with
Mm.
permission. I always ask permission,
Yeah.
right? They've come back and they've said, no, can't do it, flooded,
Yeah.
and they shut down. And you
Yeah.
you literally see their bodies and their heads shut down,
Mm.
dissociate, and I go, right, that was on me. I went too
Yeah.
quickly. Please
Yeah.
do not think for a second that you're doing anything wrong. You are not.
Yeah.
Protective system is doing exactly what it's meant to do.
Yeah.
Okay. I went too fast. And
Yeah.
that's not my fault. We're just testing and adjusting.
Yeah.
All right.
Finding the groove.
We're finding the groove. We'll figure
Yeah.
it out together, but let's just do whatever your parts need to do to protect you from this feeling, you do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's totally
Absolutely.
appropriate. I had one guy come back. It was 4 weeks between sessions. He's like, I have been in crisis for 4 weeks straight.
Oh.
And I said to him, I was like,
Oh my gosh.
and he's like, I haven't been able to work. I haven't been able
Oh.
to. And we did a deep piece of work with this
Yeah.
guy because his parts, and it was full permission, right?
Mm.
His parts, we were saying, yep, this is what we want to do. They were trying to force him to do what they thought was the right thing.
Yeah.
Right. Logically, he's like, this is how we heal ourselves. So we're just going to do it. We're just going to do what Matt says, right?
Yeah.
And I was taking that as permission rather than coercion, internal
Mm.
coercion.
Yeah.
And because I didn't see it, and his protective system just tried to tough it out until the next
Yeah.
session, got to the next session, and oh my God, like
Mm.
that was a doozy because I had to really work with the protectors to repair,
Yeah.
any trust that I might have lost in that space
Yeah.
for not being capable enough. And it was amazing. Now he works wonderfully in his own system, right? Because we were able, like, again, we're modeling that repair, we're modeling that trust. I'm sitting there going, I didn't notice that. That's on
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, what?
Yeah. That
You're
transparent.
taking responsibility?
Yeah.
No
What
one's ever
is
done
that?
that for
What
like
does
my
that
life.
look like?
Right. And I'm just like, this is what guys don't have, right?
Yeah.
You know, and
Exactly.
so a lot of guys will go back and their therapist or their psychologist will say, oh, right, you mustn't have done it right. Or, the
Yeah.
tools aren't working, or
Yeah.
there's
We need
something,
to shift
wrong
gears
with
to
you. We
something
need to shift gear,
different. Yeah.
there's something wrong with, with your system where that wasn't effective enough. And I was like, no, no,
Yeah.
no. Your system was bloody perfect. That was
Yeah.
super effective.
It's
That
doing
part
what
of
it's
you,
trained and designed to
right?
do.
That part of you that let us go to that place too quickly really wanted you to heal.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's a good thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I
Honor
just didn't
that.
catch that it was a part. I
Yeah.
just
Of
didn't catch that
course.
we were bypassing something. That's
Yeah.
on me,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
that's okay. That's okay. I mean, I
Yeah.
prefer, I wish that you'd called me, the next day or something, so I could have got you in, a few
Not
days
4 weeks
later,
later.
not 4 weeks, but that's okay.
Oh
I
dear.
just a little reminder. Every
Yeah.
Friday, I have emergency sessions
Oh
just
my
for things
goodness.
like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put a few extra
Exactly.
things in place, now since that time.
Oh.
But really, like, I think just like that slow, and a lot of men do not want to go slow. They do not
No.
want to be gentle. They do not want to be crisp. There's a lot of like, it feels like coercion. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
like, give them what they want, but also sprinkle a little bit of what we think they need. And that
Yeah.
feels a little experty. That feels a little like
Yeah.
I know more than you about your own
Yeah.
life. But at the same time, the feedback is always the same. They say, "Oh, I've been to this psychologist. I've got these tools. I've done this. I've done that." And I go, "Great. How's that been working for you over the last few years?" They go, "It hasn't. It's
Yeah,
done nothing."
exactly. I'm
I'm
talking
like,
to
"Right.
you. It's
Okay.
clearly not
Cool. Right.
working.
Right." So like, okay. So
The
so
toolbox,
obviously
let's put the toolbox aside.
let's put them over there.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the things I was talking to a client about today. I was just said, look, I get it. I get it that
Yeah.
you feel even worse because those tools aren't working. And I get that you
Yeah.
feel, like even more shameful and bad and like you're getting it wrong because you're not able to implement, or the part is too strong, or the anger is just too much, or whatever it is. I don't work that way. I
Yeah.
never have,
No.
right? But at the same time, if you need tools, if those intellectual, logical, analytical parts want something to grapple and
Yeah.
grip onto, I've got them. Here they are.
Yeah. And
Here's the link.
tools can be great. Tools can be
Yeah.
a wonderful, they're helpful, but they're only helpful if it's the right tool and you know how to use it. There's no
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
trying to hammer something with a screwdriver. Yes, you might
Right.
get the same job done, but it's not going to be super effective for you. So you want the
Mm,
right tool for the right purpose with the right person, and
yep.
that combination then means that it works.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
those stock standard here, just you've got anxiety here, do this.
Do
That's
this
never going to
journaling
work.
exercise
Yeah,
and,
that's never
you
going
know,
to work.
right, right.
So
And
yeah,
and I think you've touched on something really important there, which is like a lot of the pieces have to fall into place before things can feel really effective,
yeah,
and some of those pieces are within our control and some of those pieces aren't within our
yeah,
control. For some people it takes 10 years to find the right person. For some people they find it the first time around. It can be really challenging for guys who have never done this before, who don't know or understand the nuance, and that's why I think as clinicians it's really important for us to be able to hold sort of space and compassion and curiosity for our guys, even if it's not working,
yeah,
right? Or even if they want to go too fast, or even if, they're asking for things that we don't give, to really understand that this is a pretty tricky environment to navigate as it is, right? Let alone with all of our own wounds and a lot of our own insecurities.
yeah,
And on top of a protective parts that don't want us to be vulnerable
yeah,
with people we don't know. So I
absolutely.
just hold a lot of patience, a lot of perspective. I do a lot of work on just trying to zoom out in my own mind around what is this person really, I've had clients say, that's really offensive, Matt, when I've like called out stalking behavior or
Yeah,
something really intense, where I'm like, wow, that's actually like I can, for you, that's you breaching that boundary of that
yeah,
person. That's you like finding a loophole and
mm,
doing the opposite of what that person's asked you to do. Right.
yeah,
And they'll be like, that's so offensive. Like, that's not, what I was trying. It's a total misinterpretation. My
mm,
parts are going to come up around that. Right. But if I can zoom out and just gain that perspective to be like, oh, of course that person's going to get defensive around me
yeah,
naming that.
yeah, absolutely.
And it's important for me to name that
Mm-hmm.
for as I see it.
Yeah,
Right. So I say, right, you really feel offended.
yeah,
Like you really struggle with that idea that maybe that behavior that you thought was totally normal because it is technically legal,
yeah,
right, might actually be a breach of somebody's trust or a breach of something, even though technically you're
mm,
allowed to do it,
yeah,
right? And so for them, that carries a lot of shame. That carries a lot of guilt. That carries.
yeah,
So if I can just zoom out, if I can just stay really curious and be with them and not take that personally,
mm,
then I'm doing my job. I'm
yeah,
connecting with them. I'm building that relationship. All right. And then
absolutely.
I'm running to supervision afterwards.
And I mean, I feel like we've jumped down a rabbit hole that we could, talk about for hours, to be honest. But I want to let's finish with I've asked everybody who I'm doing these chats with to think of a myth that you would love to smash. What is that myth? What are we smashing?
I like to remind myself every day that I come into work that men are not the simple creatures we think they are, that we're taught that they are,
Yeah.
that they will tell us that they are. They're not the simple creatures that they want to be. And one of the ways, one of the things that I like to just remind myself every day is that telling them that they're more complex and that they have feelings and, just like
Yeah.
steamrolling them into understanding that it's okay to have feelings and emotions and complexity and nuance and not need to logic and problem solve their way out of
Yeah.
everything is not usually effective. I haven't met many people, many guys where that's been the most effective strategy. It's back to your original
Oh,
point. It's always the same.
yeah.
Showing them
Yeah.
that there's more to themselves than they might realize and
Yeah.
that that's okay and
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah.
right? And understanding that nuance is going to give them the capacity to relate better to their partners, to their
Mhm.
parents, to their kids, and become the kind of people that they want to be,
Yeah.
right? And actually sort of move towards effective behavior change,
Yeah.
right? Which is what they're coming to us for. So
Yeah.
that's the big one for me. Men are not the simple creatures that everyone wants them to be, that they think they think they are, and that they kind of are told that they should be.
We are all human, and humans
Yeah,
are complex. And why there is that sort of assumption that men are somehow immune to that is ridiculous.
it
To
is.
It's just ridiculous. It's bizarre. I don't know how we ever came to that, but however it happened is insane to me.
Yeah. Yep.
Men are not immune to the complexities of life or relationships or their own internal world at map. So I love that.
As hard as they may try, as hard as they may
Yeah.
try.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know.
We as humans do not deserve to be boxed in. So
Yeah.
let's throw the
And
boxes in the recycling bin.
exactly. Yeah. And at the same time, let's do it safely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Don't shove it all in at once. It
if
won't
we
all
just
fit. Have you seen the size
throw
of
the guys out of
recycling
their
bins?
box.
They're
Exactly.
tiny.
Right. Yeah.
You are never going to shove it all in. And you will get boxes that are, TV size boxes, and you'll get one that is a tissue box size. And
Right.
so let's maybe start with the tissue box size and not go straight to one that, a couch fit in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yep.
that's going to be much easier. Let's pull that one apart slowly, bit by bit.
So the analogy that I use with almost every single one of my clients, and funnily enough, fits perfectly with the box analogy you're using, is let's go into the basement,
Yeah.
all right, where you've stored all your boxes and you've stored all
Mm-hmm.
your shit. Sometimes I'll say, let's go out into the garage out the
Yeah.
back. All
Yeah.
right, if they're a really particularly manly man with
Yeah.
a ute and stuff, and I'll go, let's go to the shed, mate. All right, in your mind, let's go to the shed where you
Yeah.
store all your shit. All right, and all we're doing today is turning the light on.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Amazing.
We're
Yeah.
not touching a box. We're not touching a box. We're not touching any of your shit. I just want you to know that it's there.
Yeah.
Okay. We can turn the light on. We can look around. We can notice, how do we feel? Overwhelmed, interested, curious? What's going on for you as you notice how much is in your basement? How much is
Yeah.
in your shed? How much is in your garage? How much you stored away?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe there is some scary stuff that can be down there. There's some really big stuff, daunting stuff that can be down there. And that's all okay. We're not touching it. We're just turning the light on. And when you feel ready, turn the light off and come back out.
Yeah. Amazing.
And it just opens them up to this idea that maybe there's some stuff that they've been pushing down and burying and ignoring and putting away, and that's okay, normal.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. But that we can access it if and when we feel ready to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Works quite well. They seem to like it.
Absolutely. That's great. Well, the boxes have got to go somewhere. So I love the basement
Definitely.
garage method.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it has been wonderful chatting to you, Matt. It has been great. I think that we probably could have chatted for a whole nother hour, to be honest. I
Oh,
think there is a lot of
agreed.
nuance and complexity with working in this space. Uh,
Yeah.
and I love that you are, because it is needed. There
Yeah.
needs to be a container, a space where people and where men can go. And I don't tend to use the term safe space. I tend to
Yeah.
go with, I want my, therapy space to feel like it's filter free, because we
Mm,
filter language all the time. We go, I
mm,
won't bring that up because, it'll cause an argument, or I won't say that because, it'll just be easier that way. I'll just, push it down. It's just easier. And so I
yeah.
want this space to be filter free. And I think there needs to
Mm,
be that space for men to feel like they don't have to, filter something. They don't need to reframe something for your benefit. They get to just be who they are and, explore the complexities, explore
right.
that, inner
Right.
world. So I love that there is that space, and that it is an accessible space for people nationwide. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
great. Amazing.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Sam. And I agree. I think, I'm like I said, I'm starting to really build and cultivate a bit of a
Yeah.
community of like-minded people who love
Yeah.
working with men and want to kind of, whether that's, in their practice, like solely their focus in the
Yeah.
practice, or just as a part of their practice.
Yeah.
I've got a professionals Facebook group of people who work with men and fathers, and
Amazing.
we just chat and we put our stuff in and we put like resources in there. If anyone's doing talks and anything like that, they chuck it in, and
Mm.
we're just kind of helping just support each other around the nuance of working with guys in the
Mhm.
space, and
And
it's
those
really wonderful.
Absolutely. Those collectives are so needed. I have one as well of a collective of therapists that I set up with a colleague around our specialty, which is really just trauma. And, it is, needed to be able to have
Mm,
collective spaces where, there is mutual learning. There is no
yeah,
experts here. We are all learning
right,
from one another. And we are learning because we want to be able to present one, our best selves, and two, the best spaces for the people who fall into our rooms, whether
right,
that be physical or virtual. So
right.
amazing.
And also happy to send you the link if anyone listening wants to,
Yes.
if
Yeah,
you're a
I will.
practitioner or what, you can just jump in,
Yeah,
and have that chat. I've got a
amazing.
few school teachers from Africa who, I don't know if they fit the criteria, but for the
Oh my
most part,
goodness.
counselors, it's called
Oh,
counseling
don't
men
we
and
love social
fathers.
mean Oh,
I think
good.
they genuinely
Yeah.
want to join in. There was nothing sort of dodgy about it at all. But I was
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, I don't know if this is going to be right fit for you. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'll send you the link for that as well if people are interested.
Amazing. Perfect. I will be popping all of your details in the description anyway, so I
Awesome.
hope people will be able to follow social medias, head to your website
Yeah.
for more details, all of that sort of
I've,
thing.
but I am very much like yourself in the process of getting like a counseling, I'm call a podcast called like Australian Aussie Men's Counseling Podcast
Mhm.
for men,
Yep.
where I interview practitioners and guides around specific niches and things like that,
Yep.
as a resource, because it's just like I'm getting to the point where I
Yeah.
can't see everyone, but I'd love to still get a lot of that information out there. So hopefully that'll be up and running by the end of the year as well. I'll get you on.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Matt. It's been great.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. This is awesome. Well done.
We hope you enjoyed joining us inside the therapy room. Thanks for listening.